This goes back to what I said in July of 2024, that she was doomed. And what we see, if her perception is accurate, that she was doomed from the start more than we knew. This is why I said I thought it was a horrible idea to force Joe Biden out. And then also coupling it with Rob Reiner and Stephen King and George Clooney and the pile on for weeks and weeks and weeks. It was done. When Joe Biden stepped down, it was done. And I know people don't want to hear this, and you probably disagree, Richard. I think that if Joe Biden would have stayed in the race, I think he would have won by a hair, or I don't think he would have lost all swing states. And I know folks don't want to believe that, and they pay attention to polls. And here's the other thing. Democrats care too much about polls. Polls could have Donald Trump at 0%. They don't care. Democrats live and die by these ridiculous, inaccurate, famously inaccurate polls. Democrats care too much about being liked. Republicans don't care about that. And I haven't read the full book from Kamala Harris. One of the things I was thinking is, why didn't you fight back? I would have been bossed out. You need to go in there on some Joan Crawford shit. Bring me the axe, God damn it. Well, look how unhinged Republicans are. Scott Bassett is threatening to punch somebody in the face. I'm not saying we have to go down that route, but Democrats play too much respectability politics. And I really think, at so much so, they managed to kick the president of the United States off the ticket in July. So clearly she was doomed. We talk about her not having enough of a runway. Clearly, the runway was even shorter than we thought. And now look where we are a year later. Black women losing their jobs, 300,000 some black women. I know folks who've already been fired in public health jobs. I'm sure you do too as well, Richard. The museum, you're going to have lawyers walk through the museum to see if there's too much slavery being mentioned. I mean, Democrats at large really screwed up last year, and there was no way for her. You know, we always expect, she isn't a janitor. She can't clean up everything.
No, I agree with that. But here's my critique, right? And I want to read the rest of this book, right, and see what it says.
Yeah.
I do think the curtness of this chapter maybe gives me some hope that she'll sort of dish the dirt on some of the other looming problems. But I think when I read what she said about that White House, that senior White House team that sort of threw her under the bus, the red flag that was immediately raised to me was some of those same people, and I know who she's talking about, were the ones that were tasked with running the Biden campaign, ultimately the Harris-Walz campaign.
Exactly.
And, you know, the buck stops with the candidate at the end of the day. The buck stops with the person whose name's on the signs. So you allow those people to run your campaign. And as somebody who, as a strategist, now I don't do campaign work, as you know, my work is more so around labor work and work stoppages and, you know, strikes, labor strikes. But what struck me as sort of weird in the Harris campaign structure was this idea that we're going to go after this disaffected white working class voter and they were going to be our saving grace. And the thought being that that's how we're going to win, and not even in a world in which that was the Biden model to win. Kamala Harris is one, not Joe Biden, and number two, the last time we saw a successful black candidate run and win the presidency, that candidate had a robust conversation about race. And I'm not talking about a conversation about, oh, I went to go talk to black constituencies. I'm saying, I mean, I will never forget the whole speech that Barack Obama gives on race. He gives a whole major primetime address about race where he talks about what it is to be a black man in America and how hard it is for him to catch a cab, and like how that contextual, and it talks about his grandmother using the M word and explains this sort of patchwork that makes him the right candidate to be president. And a lot of those
around the
elements,
Jeremiah Wright conversation,
yeah,
correct?
just after the Jeremiah Wright
Yeah,
conversation, he
yeah,
gives a
yeah.
lot of those elements were missing from the Harris campaign, in my opinion. And I don't necessarily blame that on the candidate. I blame it on the people who are around the candidate and the strategy to say, we're not going to, this is the first time we've seen a Black woman on a national presidential campaign ticket at the top of the ticket. And we're not going to have a conversation with the American electorate about a Black woman on top of the ticket and what the implications of that and the historical context of that. And I listen, the American voter, we can all acknowledge they've elected Donald Trump twice. They might not be the smartest voter in the world. And I think you have to take the voter on a journey of how we got here and why this moment's important and why this moment matters to history. And I think the Obama team got that, and Barack Obama himself understood that. And that was built into their campaign. In this excerpt, she talks about the importance of the Divine Nine and her role in it. But that, to me, in a very poignant, upfront, center stage, let's talk about it moment to the American electorate was missing. And I think that was missing because, let's be very clear, the same people that were part of that White House team that pushed narratives about her that were incorrect, that pushed narratives about her being a bad boss, that did not quell narratives about her having like being a DEI hire, were the same people running the campaign and the same people who said that Joe Biden doesn't have a Black person issue because he picked Kamala Harris to be at the bottom of his ticket. So how could then they there say, well, she doesn't have a Black person issue? So you just had people that had blinders on and they missed glaring problems, which got us here. Because America does have a problem with race. And Clay, to your point, you have Justice Department attorneys walking around one of the most profitable Smithsonian museums in Washington, finding problems with it because it's too un-American. But the American people seem to like it. So that tells you everything you need to know about the moment that we're in.
Look at now. The polls are terrible for Donald Trump right now. He don't care. He ain't doing anything different. He's doubling down. He don't care if he's popular. They're redrawing the maps in Missouri right now. Allegedly, it's really unpopular. They don't care about being popular. All they care about is power. And Democrats just play by the rules, and they're going to be upstanding and polished, yet lose. Democrats still think they're playing politics. You aren't playing politics anymore. This is beyond politics. You're playing a nasty game of good and evil, of right and wrong, not right and left, right and wrong. And y'all still think if we talk about the economy, if we talk about kitchen table issues, if we say what we're going to do for the American people, we're going to win. No, you're not. Folks don't even know what the economy means. Folks vote against their own kitchen table, Richard. They vote against it all the time.
I mean, I think the struggle that Democrats have in this moment is they say that Donald Trump is harmful, and all the harms are perceived harms, and they're not real harm. And so I think in the two things the Democratic Party has to do right now, they have to talk about what they're doing well. And there are stories of the Democratic Party doing things well, and they're not elevating those stories in the right way. Case in point, this week, let's put it this way. This week in New Mexico, the governor of New Mexico has expanded childcare to everybody who lives in the state of New Mexico, not pre-K, childcare.